Alaska is so large that if it were split in half, each half would still be the biggest state in America. That is where this list starts, and it is the least surprising thing on it. Over the next 50 facts, we will cover a wave taller than any skyscraper ever built, an earthquake that moved water in Louisiana, a frog that spends winter clinically dead, and a mountain that has a legitimate claim over Everest. Today, we're counting down 50 Alaska facts that will reshape how you see the 49th state. This channel is built on verified geography and natural science. Subscribe if that's your kind of thing. Let's start with Fact 50. Fact 50. Bigger than 3 giants combined. Start with the baseline. Alaska covers 663,268 square miles, stretching 2,400 miles east to west, roughly Los Angeles to New York. Texas, California, and Montana are the next 3 largest states. Combine all 3, and Alaska is still bigger. Map projections shrink it near the pole, which is why almost nobody's mental map of Alaska is correct. 1 state, 1/6 of America. Fact 49. The roof of North America. Denali stands 20,310 feet above sea level, the highest point on the continent, and about 5,900 feet taller than anything in the lower 48. That number is newer than you'd think. A 2015 GPS survey shaved 10 feet off the figure that had stood since 1953. On clear days, the mountain is visible from Anchorage, 130 miles away, floating above the horizon like a mirage. Fact 48. America's coldest hometown. Utqiagvik, at the top of the continent, holds the record for the lowest annual average temperature of any U.S. community, just 9.3 degrees Fahrenheit, the yearly average, not the winter low. And yet people have lived here continuously for centuries, with Inupiat archaeological sites dating to around 500 CE. Whale jawbone arches still stand on the beach facing a frozen ocean. Fact 47. The 800-mile Steel River. The Trans-Alaska Pipeline runs 800 miles from Prudhoe Bay on the Arctic Ocean to the port of Valdez, roughly Chicago, to Atlanta through 3 mountain ranges. It was deliberately built in a zigzag on sliding supports, so earthquakes flex it instead of snapping it. That design was tested by a magnitude 7.9 quake in 2002. The pipe held. Fact 46. Texas fits inside twice. Texans are proud of their state's size, and fairly so. 268,600 square miles is enormous. Alaska could hold Texas more than twice over, at a ratio of about 2.4 to 1. Cut Alaska in half, and each piece still ranks first. Texas drops to third. The famous overlay map, with Alaska draped across the lower 48 from Florida to California, looks wrong. It isn't. Fact 45. An empire of islands. Along that coast sit 2,670 named islands, more than any other state. They range from the rainforest islands of the southeast panhandle to the treeless volcanic Aleutians, spread across more than 2,000 miles of ocean. Many have never held a permanent resident, others hold ancient indigenous communities reachable only by boat or bush plane. From a ferry in the Inside Passage, they slide past for days. Fact 44. 3 million lakes. Roughly 3 million lakes. That is the working estimate for Alaska, alongside more than 3,000 rivers, about 4 lakes for every resident of the state. Glaciers and permafrost built a landscape that traps water everywhere, in kettle ponds and thaw lakes beyond counting. From a jet window over the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, the tundra looks like shattered glass. Most of those lakes have no name. Fact 43. 100,000 glaciers. Alaska holds an estimated 100,000 glaciers, covering about 29,000 square miles. 5% of the entire state is permanent ice, an area nearly the size of South Carolina. That is more active glacier and ice field than the rest of the inhabited world. High coastal mountains meet moisture-heavy Pacific storms here, and together they manufacture ice on an industrial scale. Fact 42. The longest river of ice. One of those glaciers deserves its own entry. The Nabesna Glacier, flowing off the Wrangell volcanic massif, runs approximately 53 miles, the longest valley glacier in North America and the longest interior valley glacier in the world. It never reaches the sea. A bush plane can follow it for over 20 minutes and see nothing below but crevasses, moraine stripes, and turquoise meltwater. Fact 41. 17 of the top 20. Pot. When people rank America's mountains, one state dominates. 17 of the 20 highest peaks in the United States are Alaskan, including 19 summits above 14,000 feet. Colorado built an identity around its 14ers. In Alaska, that altitude is where the serious mountains begin. The Pacific Plate is still driving these ranges upward year after year. Fact 40. A mountain rising from the sea. Mount St. Elias climbs to 18,008 feet, America's second highest peak, inside a park whose lowest elevation is 0 at the Pacific. The St. Elias Mountains are the tallest coastal range on Earth, and the sweep from tidewater to summit here is among the steepest vertical reliefs on the planet. From a boat in icy bay, breaking waves and in 1,800-foot summit share a single frame. Fact 39. More volcanoes than anywhere else in America. The Aleutian Arc is the boiling seam of the Pacific Ring of Fire, and it gives Alaska more than 70 potentially active volcanoes, more than every other state combined. Several have erupted in recent times, and ash clouds from the chain regularly disrupt trans-Pacific flights. On the Kenai Peninsula, residents can sometimes watch volcanic steam rise across Cook Inlet from the grocery store parking lot. Fact 38. Half of America's coastline. Alaska's 6,640 miles of general coastline make up approximately 54% of the entire U.S. total, fronting 3 bodies of water: the Pacific, the Arctic Ocean, and the Bering Sea. One state, more ocean frontage than the other 49 combined. It is why Alaska runs the largest fishing industry in the country, pulling salmon, pollock, crab, and halibut from some of the most productive cold water on Earth. Fact 37. The shoreline that keeps growing. Measure closer and the number gets stranger. Counting islands, bays, and inlets. Alaska's shoreline runs 33,904 miles, and newer NOAA tidal mapping puts it above 46,600 miles, longer than every other state's shoreline combined. This is the coastline paradox. The finer your map, the more curves you trace, the longer the coast becomes. Stretched out, that line would wrap nearly twice around the Earth. Fact 36. Almost no roads at all. Here is a contrast. The largest state in America has fewer miles of highway than every state except tiny Rhode Island. Entire regions of western Alaska have no road link to the rest of the state at all. Alaska jumped from steamboats and dog teams almost directly to the airplane, skipping the road-building era entirely. In many villages, Main Street ends at a gravel airstrip. Fact 35. A state of pilots. Or, that absence of roads produced something else. Roughly 1 in 58 Alaskans holds a pilot's license, over 10,000 certified pilots, more per capita than any other state. Anchorage's Lake Hood is the busiest seaplane base in the world, handling nearly 200 floatplane operations a day. Flying here isn't a hobby, it's infrastructure. Fact 34. 1 person per square mile. Around 740,000 people share all of that land. About 1.1 people per second square mile, fewer residents in the whole state than in the city of Seattle. For comparison, Japan holds 331 people per second square mile. At that density, Alaska would contain roughly 220 million people. You can fly for an hour over the interior and see no road, no light, no building. Fact 33. 20 official languages. Alaska officially recognizes 20 indigenous languages, including Yupik, Inupiaq, and Tlingit, more than any other state, alongside 229 federally recognized tribes. Roughly 18% of Alaskans are Alaska Native, the highest share in the nation. In village schools on the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, children still learn in languages older than any border on the map. Fact 32. A flag designed by a kid. The state flag, 8 gold stars of the Big Dipper and Polaris on deep blue, came from a 1927 territorial contest. The winner was Benson, a 14-year-old Alaska Native living at an orphanage in Seward, whose design beat roughly 700 other school children's entries. Most drew polar bears and gold pans. His simple stars have flown, essentially unchanged, for nearly a century, 32 years before statehood even arrived. Fact 31. The race born from a rescue? In 1925, a diphtheria epidemic threatened icebound Nome, and the territory's one capable pilot was unavailable. So 20 dog sled mushers relayed the antitoxin serum, roughly 700 miles, in a little over 127 hours, through temperatures that rarely rose above 40 below, and winds strong enough to knock over dogs. The serum arrived in time. The Iditarod, a race of more than 1,000 miles, commemorates that run today. Fact 32 cents an Acre. In 1867, the United States bought all of this. Every glacier, every volcano, every future oil field from Russia for $7.2 million. That works out to about 2 cents per acre. Critics called it Seward's Folly and accused the Secretary of State of purchasing snow. Then came gold in 1896 and oil decades later. History's verdict is in. Fact 29. The day America grew by 1/6. Consider what that check actually did. On the 18th of October 1867, at the transfer ceremony in Sitka, the United States grew by 586,412 square miles in a single transaction, 1/6 larger overnight. Then, for roughly 30 years, America did almost nothing with it, sometimes maintaining no government presence at all. No U.S. land acquisition since has come close. Fact 28. A state capital you cannot drive to. Juneau is the only mainland state capital in America, with no road connection to the outside world. Every vehicle in the city arrived by ferry. The reason is geography. The Juneau ice field, an ice mass roughly the size of Rhode Island, blocks any route east, and the local road network simply dead ends about 45 miles out of town. Legislators, groceries, cars, all by air or sea. Fact 27. 65 days without a sunrise. In Utqiagvik, about 300 miles north of the Arctic Circle, the sun sets in mid-November and does not rise again for roughly 65 days. Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, all pass without a single sunrise. The town isn't fully dark. A few hours of blue, civil twilight glow on the southern horizon at midday, and the aurora often owns the sky. Then, in late January, the sun returns. Fact 26. Then 84 days without a sunset. Summer flips the switch entirely. The sun rises over Utqiagvik in May and does not set again for about 84 days, circling the sky instead of leaving it. Residents adapt with blackout curtains and midnight softball. The local high school fields, America's northernmost football team. At 2 in the morning, the sun hangs golden over the frozen Arctic Ocean while children play outside. That's the halfway point. Which of these facts has surprised you most so far? Drop it in the comments. We read every one. And stay with us, because the second half is where the earthquakes, the mega tsunami, and the frozen frog live. Fact 25. Minus 80 degrees. The coldest temperature ever officially recorded in the United States belongs to Alaska. Minus 80 degrees Fahrenheit at Prospect Creek Camp on the 23rd of January, 1971. The daytime high that day was minus 64. At those temperatures, Boiling water thrown into the air explodes into ice crystals, and steel can shatter like glass. The record has stood for over half a century. Fact 24. A 1400-foot volcano that still steams. Mount Wrangell rises 14,163 feet, wearing glaciers over one of the largest active volcanoes in North America. Its last major eruption came around 1900, but geothermal vents in the summit caldera still melt through the ice. On cold, clear days, a thin white column of steam rises off the snowfield, a 14,000-foot mountain, quietly breathing. Fact 23. 30,000 bald eagles. Alaska hosts about 30,000 bald eagles, the largest population in the United States. Every late fall, over 3,000 of them converge on one river, the Chilkat, near Haines, where warm, upwelling water keeps the river ice-free, and a late salmon run lays out a feast. It is the largest concentration of bald eagles on Earth. Cottonwoods stand so full of white heads they look decorated. Fact 22. The fastest fault you've never heard of. Everyone knows the San Andreas. Fewer know the Queen Charlotte Fairweather system, running underwater along southeastern Alaska, slipping at more than 2 inches per year, nearly double the San Andreas's, 1 to 1.5 inches. Over a human lifetime, its two sides shift about 14 feet past each other. Invisible, silent, and accumulating strain every day. Fact 21. Tens of thousands of earthquakes a year. That energy shows up in the numbers. Alaska records more than 20,000 earthquakes annually, by some counts over 40,000, making it the most seismically active state by an enormous margin. In 2017, while the entire contiguous U.S. logged about 70 quakes of magnitude 4 or greater, Alaska and the eastern Aleutian Arc logged 192. The ground here never fully stops moving. Fact 20. A great earthquake every 13 years. On average, Alaska produces a magnitude 8 or larger earthquake every 13 years, a magnitude 7 to 8 roughly every 2 years, and about 6 magnitude 6 quakes annually. In Anchorage, schoolchildren run earthquake drills the way other states run fire drills, because the next one is a matter of when. Fact 19. The largest protected wilderness on Earth. Along the Canadian border, 4 parks, Wrangell-St, Elias, Glacier Bay, Canada's Cluane, and Tatchinchini-Alsek form a single UNESCO World Heritage Complex spanning tens of millions of acres. The largest internationally protected wilderness in the world. Grizzlies, Dall sheep, and mountain goats cross the border without noticing it. Somewhere in the ice, an invisible line separates 2 countries. Nothing on the ground changes. Fact 18. Russia is closer than the next state. At its narrowest, the United States sits just 2.4 miles from Russia, and Russia's Big Diomede Island lies only about 25 miles from mainland Alaska. Meanwhile, the nearest U.S. state is over 500 miles away. During the Cold War, this strait became the ice curtain, splitting Inupiat families who had crossed freely for generations. Villagers on the American side can see a foreign military outpost from their windows. Fact 17. A valley buried 660 feet deep. In 1912, pyroclastic flows filled the Knife Creek Valley with more than 200 meters, about 660 feet of ash and rock, creating the 40-square-mile valley of 10,000 smokes. Deep enough to bury the Washington Monument with 100 feet to spare. The deposit steamed through thousands of fumaroles for a decade. Explorers who first saw it called it the modern inferno. Fact 16. Where the tsunami warning system was born. Of the more than 130 people killed in the 1964 disaster, 119 died in tsunamis. Some as far away as Oregon and California, more than 1,500 miles from the epicenter. Valdez lost its waterfront when the harbor bottom collapsed. The town was rebuilt 4 miles away. The response created what is now the National Tsunami Warning Center based in Palmer, Alaska. The entire Pacific Rim prepares differently because of that day. Fact 15. The glacier bigger than a state. The Malaspina Glacier covers about 850 square miles, spreading roughly 60 miles across a coastal plain, larger than the entire state of Rhode Island. It is North America's biggest Piedmont glacier, ice pouring from mountain valleys and pooling into one enormous lobe. From orbit, it looks like marbled cake batter, dark bands of rock swirled through white ice. One glacier, bigger than one state. Fact 14. A park the size of 6 Yellowstones. The Malaspina fits inside something even larger, Wrangell-St. Elias National Park and Preserve spans 13.2 million acres, nearly 6 Yellowstones, and 25% larger than Switzerland. It could hold Yellowstone, Yosemite, and Switzerland at the same time, and 99% of it is roadless backcountry. You can fly across it for most of an hour and never leave the park. Fact 13. Alaska has hit 100 degrees. Alaska's all-time record high is 100 degrees Fahrenheit, set at Fort Yukon on the 27th of June, 1915. Hawaii's all-time record high is also exactly 100. The frozen state and the tropical one share an identical ceiling because interior Alaska bakes under a 20-plus hour summer sun, and Fort Yukon sits above the Arctic Circle, which means America has recorded triple-digit heat in the Arctic. Total observed range in Alaska, 180 degrees. Fact 12. The coldest camp was a job site. Return to that -80 record for a moment, because there is a detail worth knowing. Prospect Creek wasn't a weather station in the void. It was a camp housing part of the 27,000-strong workforce building the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. The coldest morning in American history happened at a job site, and people worked through that winter. The camp is now a clearing in the woods. The record still stands. Fact 11. North, west, and east at once. Alaska is the northernmost state. It is also the westernmost. And this is the part that breaks people. It is technically the easternmost, too. The Aleutian chain stretches so far that it crosses the 180th meridian into the eastern hemisphere. Poshnoi Point on Semisopochnoi Island sits, by the coordinates, east of London. One state, occupying both halves of the planet simultaneously. Confirmed by the state of Alaska itself. Fact 10. The biggest eruption of the 20th century. It happened here, not in Indonesia or the Philippines. In June 1912, Novarupta erupted, roughly 13 to 15 cubic kilometers of magma over 60 hours, about 30 times the volume of Mount St. Helens, equivalent to 230 years of Kilauea, compressed into 2.5 days. The site was so remote that scientists didn't reach it until 1918. 6 miles away, the summit of Mount Katmai collapsed into a 2-mile-wide caldera as its magma drained out from underneath. Fact 9. 3 days of midnight at noon. Downwind of Novarupta, Kodiak Island vanished into near-total darkness for almost 3 full days as ash fell like gray snow, up to a foot deep across nearly 3,000 square miles. Villagers sheltered aboard ships while roofs collapsed under the weight. Reports describe a lantern held at arm's length becoming invisible at midday. The finest ash rode the stratosphere and eventually circled the entire planet. Fact 8. The quake that rearranged the map. The 1964 earthquake did not just shake Alaska, it moved it. Roughly 100,000 square miles of land, an area the size of Colorado, permanently shifted. Parts of Montague Island rose as much as 38 feet, stranding docks and seafloor above the tide, while land around Kodiak and the Kenai Peninsula sank up to 8 feet, drowning forests in salt water. Gray, ghost forests of salt-killed spruce still stand along Turnagain Arm today. Fact 7. Felt in 47 states. The same quake registered in every U.S. state except Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Delaware. Seattle's Space Needle swayed 1,200 miles from the rupture, and water sloshed in rivers and bayous on the coasts of Texas and Louisiana, a seiche triggered by seismic waves ringing the planet like a bell. Boat owners on the Gulf of Mexico watched their moorings rise and fall under a calm sky, minutes after Alaska went still. Fact 6. The ground shook for 4.5 minutes. Here's the event itself. At 5:36 p.m. on Good Friday, the 27th of March, 1964, a 580-mile section of fault ruptured beneath southern Alaska. Magnitude 9.2, the most powerful earthquake ever recorded in North America, and the second most powerful ever recorded on Earth, behind only Chile in 1960. The shaking lasted about 4.5 minutes. Streets in Anchorage split open. The Turnagain Heights neighborhood liquefied and slid toward the sea. Its study helped prove plate tectonics itself. Fact 5. The frog that freezes solid. Now, something small. Alaska's wood frog survives winter by freezing, genuinely freezing. Up to 60 to 70% of its body water turns to ice for as long as 7 months, at temperatures below -1.8 Celsius. Its heart stops, its breathing stops. By any clinical definition, it is dead. The frog's liver floods its cells with glucose, a natural antifreeze that protects them until spring, when the heart flickers back and takes its first beat in months. Transplant researchers are studying it to learn how to preserve human organs. Fact 4. A mountainside hit the water. On the night of the 9th of July, 1958, an earthquake on the Fairweather Fault shook roughly 40 million cubic yards of rock, about 90 million tons, off a 3,000-foot cliff into the head of Lituya Bay all at once. The impact was heard 50 miles away. This bay had produced 100-foot waves before. What it produced that night had no precedent anywhere on Earth. Fact 3. The 1,720-foot wave. The displaced water surged 1,720 feet up the opposite mountainside, the highest wave run-up ever recorded, taller than the Empire State Building. With its antenna, it stripped every tree from the slopes as it swept the length of the bay and out to sea. 2 fishing boats rode it. One was carried clean over the trees of a spit. 5 people died. The trimline where the forest was erased is still visible from the air today. Fact 2. You can see tomorrow from Alaska. In the middle of the Bering Strait, Little Diomede and Big Diomede sit 2.4 miles apart and 21 hours apart. The international dateline runs between them, doubling as the U.S.-Russia border, which is why they're nicknamed Yesterday Island and Tomorrow Island. Noon on Thursday on the American side is 9 a.m. Friday on the Russian side. When winter ice bridges the gap, a 20-minute walk would, in theory, carry you into tomorrow. Crossing is strictly forbidden, but the residents of Little Diomede can see the next calendar day from their windows. Fact 1. Taller than Everest. Everyone knows Everest is the tallest mountain on Earth. Measured from sea level, it is. But Everest sits on the Tibetan Plateau, which is already about 17,000 feet high. The mountain itself rises only around 12,000 feet from its base. Denali rises from lowlands near 2,000 feet and climbs roughly 18,000 feet to its 2,310-foot summit, the greatest base-to-peak rise of any mountain entirely on land, a full vertical mile more than Everest. There are places in Denali National Park, standing at 250 feet, where you can look up at 20,000 feet of mountain in one unbroken sweep. By the measure that describes what your eyes actually see, the tallest mountain on land isn't in the Himalayas, it's in Alaska. Split Alaska in half, and each half is still the biggest state. But after 50 facts, that opening line should feel different. Now it's the half with the record wave and the half with the record quake. My favorite is the wood frog, an animal that solves winter by dying on schedule and undying 7 months later, Which fact surprised you most? Tell us in the comments. And if verified geography and natural science are your thing, subscribe. There's a lot more world to count down.